Welcome back to Chess for Closers. Dave Sherman here. I did a stream recently called Just for Fun, and I mentioned a few things that all masters know. The implication being that if you want to be a master, you got to learn these things, and that wasn't strictly true. I was going to mention the rule of the square, for instance, as being something that all Russian schoolboys and wannabe masters would know. And then Exhibit A, Magnus Carlsen, never heard of it. But I think that the Ready study with the two kings and two pawns absolutely is worth knowing. Of course, everyone knows the two-move checkmate. But I did mention, and this is maybe unfortunate, on my very short list of things that you ought to know, a very short game between two titled players. Kamran Shirazi had the white pieces, a great player, and he lost in 3 moves. Why did I have to include that? Anyway, at the time it was big news. I remember that. Anyway, so I felt bad about this, and I think that as good a player as Shirazi is, I owe it to him to show a game where he showed what he was capable of. So I mentioned in the other, when I mentioned Shirazi before, that Shirazi and Emery Tate had very similar styles. They were swashbucklers. They were risk takers. And they're both IMs, and everyone wondered why they weren't GMs. And I'm sure there's an answer to that in both cases. But I just remember seeing Shirazi at a particular World Open. This game that I'm going to show was played at a World Open. Maybe it was the same tournament. But I saw him. I was playing, but 3 different games that he played. I spent maybe almost as much time watching his games as I did at my board, and my result reflected that. He'd come out of all sorts of difficulties smelling like a rose. Pretty astonishing. This game is not one of those, I would say. And in the same way that I've picked my Emery Tate games, I've picked games that I think have more value, more instructive value, in that the moves that the Grandmaster, that Tate or Shirazi made, are moves that even if we wouldn't have played them finally, we would have considered them, and then thought better of them and done something else, something not as good. And so I think those are the games that are more valuable. Yeah, there are games that are just solid tactics and variations and calculation going on. Yeah, we can't do that, and we can marvel at it. The games are fun to watch. I'm not convinced that they have a lot of value. Let's look at the game here. Shirazi had white. This was at a World Open. Yeah, I can go on automatic here. Okay, this is not a swashbuckling move, as we all know. This is a variation. I play A4, and the point of A4, yes, of course, you have to defend your bishop. If you're not going to take on D7, you got to defend it. What we're all hoping for is for Black to play A6, then we trade off on D7, and then play A5, and then we make something, or try to make something of the weak pawn structure that Black has on the queen side. But Black wasn't having any of that. And so white castles, E5. Now this is going to make D4 more difficult, or certainly one would expect that to be more difficult. Shirazi had other ideas. Boom. Anyway, okay. Well, this has got to be a pawn sacrifice, right? It's the Mora Gambit, 8 moves later. Yeah, black is going to end up with a pawn on d4, and it's going to have to be gotten rid of. And there you go. Black could have just played bishop to g7, but he traded off first. The computer doesn't think that that's very significant one way or the other. And now he took, of course, and white took. Okay, so there's the gambit. What does white have for it? He's got the d5 square. There's another positional aspect to this position that should be acknowledged here, which is in white's favor. Well, can you see what it is? There's the pawn structure, but what else? I would say the bishops. One is more equal than the other, and that's because black's bishop is blocked by his own center pawns. Okay, other than that, I don't see much. We can say white has the pawn on b5 gives him some extra space. I'm not sure. It's closer to the queening square. That's not much of anything. So let's continue. So, okay, black played bishop e7. He wants to, rather than g7, he wants to watch his d6 pawn a little closer. But then Shirazi played this, and black won't be able to play without his rook, so he had to play bishop f8. The computer likes bishop back to g5, which is logical. Maybe Shirazi started worrying about his pawn deficit. It's so unlike him, but he's viewing the pawn on a7, and his opponent didn't think it was worth defending, and it's not so easily defended. He could play b6, but that incurs weakness on the c6, and white could double on the a file. Yeah, you always have a trade-off between time and material. Bishop g7, and he snapped it off. Castles, bishop to e3, connecting the rooks. Likewise, and now this move. I guess the one thing this is doing is clearing the d8 square, the d file, for a rook, and surely a rook should show up there soon. But he's also got access to squares on the queen side. And in fact, after b6, which was easily predicted, of course, white wants to post up on a7. Here's where they think the queen to b3 is best. I don't think it means that he'd be taking the pawn, but he might be, actually. It's not like, white can play after black takes on b2 with his queen. Rook to b1 isn't going to be followed by a rook to b7 because there's a pawn in the way. So yeah, so black missed a move here. He got his rook to the d file, posting up, defending b7, and overprotection of what? Is that overprotection? That's right, overprotection isn't really a thing. But it's attacking a backward pawn on an open file. How about that? Okay, defending more. And now, so the d5 square is white's pride and joy here. And he could play knight to d5. Then the knights could come off, and then the queens would come off. White has an edge still, but white had more plans for his knight than just to be exchanged off on the d5 square. He wanted to put his knight on d5 and have it stay. And what do you know? Black obliged. He's coming into f4. Knight c7. Rook c1. He could have played knight to d5. This is... okay, so now we're inching up to winning for white numbers here. 2.98. Knight into f4. Sort of a pseudo-active move. Take, and then knight to d5. Okay, so let's sum up here. There are two open files, and white controls both of them. He's got a much better... If his black squared bishop on c1 was better than black's counterpart on f8. Well, the knight on d5 is way better than that same bishop. So two open files, white controls both, better minor piece, a second rook coming to the 7th rank. Okay, this looks like it's over. So let's just see here. White played queen black played queen e5. And yeah, so what would we have played here? Rook c7 looks got to be a good move, right? But this is one reason why I showed this game, is that Kamran Shirazi, this amazing swashbuckler of a player, played for simplicity. He played queen to c3. Of course, the e pawn is poisoned there, and so black got out of his way. And now, again, here's another, the simple move. Yeah, I think we might jump on knight f6 because we got a discovered check coming. Maybe even a double discovered check. But in fact, and by the way, this is true on all positions like this. When you got a check against a castle position, you never go up to g7. And of course, think the same way on the other side of the board, because then you do have a double check. You always go to h8 because there's only a single check. No matter where that knight goes, yeah, make sure you don't lose your queen or a rook or something. But what you can be sure of is that there is no double check. But yeah, but it's fun, right? Knight f6 check. What happened, in fact, was queen f6. And black has no choice but to take. He took. Knight takes king g7. And then knight back to d5. The material's even, by the way. But would you play this out? The rook's coming to c7. f7 can't be defended. You got a rook tied down to a b7 pawn. If white wanted to stop for a minute and take a pawn, he could do it, but why would you? Anyway, yeah, black resigned. He read the writing on the wall here. And okay, so I think this may not have been a typical Shirazi game. I haven't looked at very many of them. I just started looking at his website or the database. But maybe it is, and maybe his reputation is in the same way that Emery's was. He attacks no matter what, whether it's called for or not. He's just a madman. When in fact, I saw enough Emery Tate games to know that most of the time when you sauntered over to his board, you'd see him a pawn up in a rook and pawn endgame or something like that, or some positional aspect that always was in his favor. But anyway, I like this game because it's on a few occasions he could have complicated, and he saw that the advantage was overwhelming in the end game, and so he went for the end game, which is how good chess is to be played. Okay, folks, that's Kamran Shirazi. Please hit the like button and the subscribe button. There's one around here somewhere. And I'll check you out next time on Chess for Closers. See ya.